Salute to all the Patreon members, all the subscribers. I want to thank you guys for your support. It really means a lot to me. We up early with it, early in the morning. Some of you guys are probably not even awake, or you're on your way to work. And I want to salute to everybody that's, up in the morning, early grind, getting it, or you getting off work. Keep hustling. All right, so we're going to talk about the negative birth rates, not just in Japan, but pretty much all around the world, mainly focusing on Asia. All right. Because it's interesting how in the Passport Bros space, a lot of people talk about relocating over to Asia, different parts of Asia. I've expressed a lot of anti-Black racism rooted in the culture in all these places over in Asia. And to see that, most of the people there, right, are pretty much dark. They're really, really dark. And they discriminate against their own people that are dark. They discriminate against their own people that don't use skin whitening creams, injections, you name it. All right. But, apart from that, to see the anti-Blackness rooted in the culture, them mistreating their own people, right? White worshiping, they're going through a crisis of their own. And that crisis in these homogenous societies is low fertility rate, negative birth rates. All right. And it's not just Japan. Japan, they're the most vocal about it. Japan and South Korea, they're the most vocal when it comes to negative birth rates. But man, I have 25 countries that's going through a fertility crisis right now that I'm about to talk about, including, different ethnic groups here in America. All right. Now, usually when a country is going through a fertility crisis, they bring in a lot of immigrants. All right. 15% of America's nation is immigrants. So they say. Me personally, I feel that number is much higher, but it depends on who they categorize as an immigrant. Right. Of course, Africans, Caribbeans, Asians, they would consider them an immigrant. They don't really consider a lot of these, Italians, Irishmen, Germans, they don't really consider them immigrants. I think once they've been indoctrinated into whiteness, then they're not really classified as an immigrant. I don't think a lot of these Latinos are considered as immigrant because a lot of these Latinos on their arrest record, they're classified as white, right? If you've been reclassified as white, I don't think America considers you an immigrant anymore, no matter where you came from. So that 15% seems really, really low, right? Especially when I travel out and about amongst these places. Y'all know I'm always traveling. I'm not even in America right now. I'm out the country right now, right? But throughout America, the city that I live in, the city that I'm from, the states that I travel throughout America, I barely see any Caucasians when I'm out. I barely see Anglos when I go out, right? The majority of people that I see when I go out and about, the majority of people that I see are immigrants, are people of color, which I hate using that term. So I don't believe that 15%, but that's what they say. I think they say Canada's like 20%. Me personally, I think it's much higher than that. It just depends on what they're being reclassified. But we're going to talk about Japan. We're going to talk about all this. We're going to talk about Asia. We're going to talk about other European countries as well, because it's not just Asian countries that's suffering through a fertility crisis. No, it's European countries. And which countries are not suffering through a fertility crisis? There's countries where, man, they are booming when it comes to their fertility rate. So when they do these studies talking about, hey, man, in 2050, this is what the average person is going to look like, at the rate of the fertility of these different countries that are at, 6.1, 6.3, 6.5, yeah, it makes a lot of sense now. All right. It makes a lot of sense. Now, in right now, I believe the Japanese population, well, the Japanese population in 2024 was 123 million. It's 123 million. Back in 2010, the Japanese population was 128 million. They've lost 5 million people within 15 years. All right. So that means every 3 years, 5 million people in 15 years. No, excuse me. So that means like what? Every 3 years, they're losing about a million people. They lose a million people every 3 years. That's a lot. They say by what, 2070? About 2070 is only going to be like 87 million people living in Japan. Japan right now has the highest, they got the oldest population in the world right now. They said that they're selling more diapers, adult diapers, than they are selling baby diapers. They said it's getting so bad, they've had to shut down schools, shut down different neighborhoods because it's not a lot of kids there in that area. It's like they got to rezone them and send them to other places. It's there's a lot of abandoned schools, but they've had to shut down certain schools and use these buildings for other things because it's not a lot of kids anymore. It's an elderly society. They say at the rate they're going, it's like they're calling people to come through and they're calling for their nation to have babies, get married, get pregnant. But, when you push feminism, this is what you go through. But, like I said in previous live streams, world leaders, so-called world leaders, have came out in public and said that they want the population to go down. They said there's way too many people. They want the population to go down. So this is what happens. Right? So let's look at some of these other countries. All right. Now, in order to maintain, for a nation to maintain its population and to see some growth, there needs to be a fertility rate of 2.1. All right. 2.1. Let me share with you 25 countries that have less than 2.1 as a birth rate in their countries. All right. So Albania is 1.3. All right. Albania is 1.3. They're going through a negative fertility rate. So they're dying more than they're giving birth. Their population numbers are dwindling. Costa Rica is 1.3. I find that interesting. Costa Rica is 1.3. I find that very interesting. All right. Switzerland, 1.3. Austria, 1.3. Greece, 1.3. Estonia, 1.3. Canada is 1.3. I'm not shocked behind that. There's a lot of feminism in Canada. It's a lot of feminism in Canada, the women living on their own. And if women do have children, they it's like they're just they'll have one kid, get rid of the father, get on welfare and live on their own, and then they have their girlfriends living with them. And it's like a household of women taking care of the baby. And then like, especially when it's a daughter, the daughter grows up, they don't even want to have kids. The daughter grows up a feminist, right? Finland, 1.3. Luxembourg, 1.3. Remember, in order for a nation to maintain its population, they need a fertility rate of 2.1. All right. I just named you 9 countries with a fertility rate of 1.3 and less. Okay. Now, Thailand, fertility rate is at 1.2. I'm not shocked behind that because, Thailand, uh, Thailand is one of the most, you can arguably say, like, if you've been to Thailand, it's one of the most, let's just put it this way, LGBT friendly countries in the world. All right. And I need to do another live stream talking about the, a lot of the brawls that have been going on in the last couple of weeks. In the past month in Thailand, it's been nothing but, at least every other night is a brawl, but the center of these brawls revolve around lady boys. Either lady boys beating each other up or lady boys beating up foreigners, because it's a discrepancy with money, right? You agree on one form of payment with a lady boy. The lady boy said no. I said this. The other man, the foreign man says no. We said this. So it's a discrepancy as far as payment, and then all hell breaks loose, right? But even when I was living in Thailand, it was a lot of feminine men. It's a lot of gay men there. And I guess apparently, because I used to be a university student in Thailand, we used to do projects, make videos, and have to display them in front of the class. Some of these projects where we would have to interview each other, some of the gay men express in some of these projects that they were presenting to the class, when they were talking about themselves, saying they were gay, and if you got a problem with it, fuck you, and this is that and the third. So it seems like there's still groups of people that I'll say this, it's still, I guess a lot of the males and the LGBT over there, they still feel discriminated against from the heterosexual society within Thailand because of the growing LGBT community that's over there. So I found that interesting. I thought it was just a way of life. You have children, one or two of them or all of them might end up being LGBT. I thought that's just what people openly accepted over there. I didn't know it was that much of an issue. Remember, I've said on live before that when you go over to Thailand, the people who have the prettiest girlfriends on their arm, the prettiest women on their arms, are the lesbians. right? So you'll have a lesbian who's like 4 foot nothing, 4'7", 4'8". Their girlfriend is like 5'3", 5'4", and the lesbian girlfriend who's more masculine in the group looks real feminine and dainty, right? No muscle mass whatsoever, no weight on them, and it's their girlfriends are taller than them, you know, more stacked than them. But they walk around, the lesbians over there, they walk around with the the prettiest girlfriends. Like their girlfriends look better than the women on the arms of the white dudes. You know what I'm saying? The white dudes, for years, a lot of people saying, "Hey, man, they just pull the baddest women out here." Nah, it's the lesbian Thai women over in Thailand that pull the baddest women. All right, Belarus, they have a birth rate of 1.2. The UAE, the United Arab Emirates, they have a birth rate of 1.2. Italy has a birth rate of 1.2. I find that very shocking because I thought it was a more of like a very passionate sexual um, culture. I'm not saying their culture is just based on sex, but it's. I watched a documentary where it was just like they're very passionate people. They don't work that much. Well, they don't work as much or as hard as Americans. The amount of vacation time they take throughout the year is a lot more than the average vacation time that we get here in America. Uh, One guy, when he went over there, who was doing a documentary on Italy, he just said, I noticed it just seemed like people are just very sexual. People just really show open signs of affection out in public like it's nothing in Italy. So I'm kind of shocked that Italy has a birth rate of 1.2. Salute to Jay Hollywood. He's up with us this early in the morning. Birth rates don't have much to do with feminism. It's linked to capitalism. Only third, second world countries are not having this issue. No, that's not true. That's not true. I just named you. I just named you, and I'm still not done yet. A third world country, Thailand, they're suffering, right? They're suffering, and these European countries, Greece, Austria, and then Costa Rica, which is over in Latin America. These aren't first world countries. That's a myth. Like, people naming European countries thinking all European countries are first world countries. No, these are third world countries that I just named, and they're suffering from a fertility issue. So that's not entirely true. It's not capitalism, but I appreciate your opinion. Salute to Matthew. What up? A lot of the decline is due to economics. Well, no, because on both sides of the spectrum, you see some of the poorest country and some of the, you know, America, Canada, they're suffering for lower fertility rates, right? Japan, they're suffering from low fertility rates. And then when you look at some of the poorest countries like Thailand, they're suffering from fertility rates, issues. Costa Rica. So it's on both sides of the scale. Um, Russia conservative don't mess with LGBT, yet their birth rate is low. China's birth rate is slowly decreasing too, also conservative. Yeah, I'm getting to that. I'm getting to that. I'm not done yet. It's just economics, work career, and expensive to have a kid, lower birth rate. I mean that is a no, because here's the thing. Here's the thing, man. Like through the internet, people have more ways of making money than ever, right? in contrast with where technology was in the 70s, the 80s. What's the difference now? I just think it's more feminism that's being pushed all across the country, well, all across the world. A lot of people saying it's economics. I don't believe that it's economics. Like I've lived in first world countries. I've lived in poor countries. I've visited poor countries. And, I hear people saying that, you know, oh, because you hear what people are saying, what they're complaining about, why they don't want to procreate and get married, but their mothers and fathers, they had it worse than them, and they still got married and had kids. It's just they've been conditioned. And see, now it's not so much more duty. Now, when you push social media, social engineering, it's like, hey, everybody's happy on social media. Everybody's rich on social media. When I grew up, I saw my parents, they had me, this is and the third, you know, they seemed like they suffered, they were struggling, but it seemed like it was a duty to just have a family and have kids, but they didn't seem too happy. We were poor. We couldn't go on vacations. We couldn't do this, that, and the third. So, what's the difference? Really, the difference is social engineering that's being pushed by way of social media. It's fuck men, men are the devil, men are evil, right? And I can't get rich having a bunch of kids and having a nagging, demanding wife, right? And then putting my children through English language courses and then coming back home and we're living paycheck to paycheck. So it has nothing to do with economics. Really, it has everything to do with social engineering. Just, you know, back then, people push for families to get together, have children. It was more conservative, like you mentioned, more conservative. Your lives revolved around the church, right? It was more strict. It was just the way things are. Now it's more liberal all across the board. It's more liberal in a lot of these countries, sexually free, more liberal. People want to be rich, travel, and I guess they feel like they can't do that. They can't be sexually free, liberal, and be able to travel at the same time and display, a certain level of them being rich on the internet if they have a family with a bunch of kids. It's a lot. Social media telling me what's up. There's a 60% chance your wife gonna cheat and take it. Yeah, this is what I'm saying. Salute the shooting from the sky. This is what I'm saying. It's like, what's the difference between back then and now? The difference is social engineering by way of social media, right? Social media is social engineering. See, these countries didn't have an issue with low fertility rate in the back then. It's still poor, right? As a matter of fact, it's more they have more access to advanced technology now than what they did from the past, right? It's more of a convenience now to have the technology that they have now than what they did back then. So what's the difference? You have more ways and means of making money now than what you had from the past. Now, what's the difference? The difference is, man, you know, you got these bots, you got these influencers influencing and pushing a message onto their population, right? With Japan, Japan now is like, and it's always been one of the more difficult places to assimilate into. They don't let foreigners in. 2% of their population is foreigners. When there's a labor shortage like they had in during the pandemic, when they had their labor shortage, they did bring in foreigners to work, side by side with other Japanese. not that many with their labors, but they didn't offer them permanent residency. It's just like, okay, for this project, we'll bring you in to work on this, and then you got to get the fuck out of here. Right? Who wants to do that? Where it's like when America has a fertility crisis, what do? They bring in immigrants and then they reclassify them as white, right? Canada, they bring in a bunch of immigrants, which now it's like it's not a homogenous society. And that's what Asian countries like Japan don't want. They don't want to bring in immigrants. And then it's kind of like, you change the culture, you change the mindset. We don't want to reclassify you as Japanese, and our culture is unique to us. So why should we bring in any like immigration is a last resort in Japan and other Asian countries. And then when we do bring you in, it's like we don't make you feel welcome. We give you names like Gaijin. You're an outsider, right? We don't give you access to everything that we have access to as a population, as a nation. But America does the opposite. Canada does the opposite. You're a full blown citizen. And then it's like you bring in so much of a certain culture and it just changes the land, the face, and it changes everything. And then people have to kind of, assimilate with you now instead of assimilating to our culture that's over here. And that's what Japan doesn't want. But it's like, okay, cool. If you don't want that, then in order to have a fertility rate of at least 2.1, y'all gonna have to have sex. You're gonna have to have sex. You're gonna have to be a little bit more liberal when it comes to sex. You know what I'm saying? Um, you know, y'all gonna well, anyways, let me run through more countries that are having a low fertility rate that's suffering. Japan, 1.2. Okay. Their fertility rate is 1.2. Lithuania, 1.2. Chile, 1.2. Come on now. Chile is not no first world country, right? It's 1.2. Poland, 1.2. San Marino, 1.2. Spain, 1.2. No, excuse me. San Marino, 1.1. Spain is 1.1. Andorra, 1.1. Malta, 1.1. China is 1.0. All right. The Ukraine is 1.0. Singapore is 1.0. Singapore, that's pretty much like one of the most diverse Asian countries that's in Asia. They're very diverse. Singapore is not even, I don't think there's such thing as like a Singaporean. I'm still trying to find out the history of what General Raffles did to the people locally in Singapore. And it's really it was a part of Malaysia that was conquered and taken over by the British. It was signed over to the British, kind of like Hong Kong. But Singapore is made up of, Malays, Chinese, Indians, Indonesians, it's a mixture of people over there. But, their birth rate is one of the lowest, 1.0, right? And I'm pretty sure it's like that because they have different ethnicities over there, but it's like they probably don't, there's no mixed breeding at all, right? There's no mixed breeding. In order for this 1.0 to be 2.1, you would have to mix breed and allow that. And, cultures are very strict over in Asia. And South Korea, they have the lowest of 0.7. South Korea, they are dying left and right. And I find that kind of strange because South Korea is like, out of all the Asian cultures over there, um, I would say as far as kind of like on the same level as Italy, not on the same level as far as like PDA and stuff like that. When you think of one of the more romantic cultures over there, I guess based on Netflix and the media and stuff like that. Me personally, I would put South Korea at the top, but that might be by design. The government might be telling their directors and producers like, "Hey, make more like romanticize our culture more, but using our own people. We need to increase these birth rates, right?" So when you look at what people say about Italy, you would be like, "Hey, the Asian version of this would probably be Korea, right? With the music, the the entertainment, So, um, Matthew says some immigrants don't want to assimilate into a country either. They want to maintain their culture and language. It may be their children that look forward identifying themselves with their birthplace, right? Right, but at the same time, it's like and I'm gonna get into this in a minute. I'm gonna talk about the most thriving, fertile countries in the world. It's not shocking at all. It's not shocking at all. Basically, it's a bunch of countries with, you know, Africoid countries, right? Black people, we're not suffering through, our fertile rates are very high, right? By way of genetics, and some people might say the music, the dancing, the twerking, it's a mating call, right? Um, the juices that come from the nectar that comes from black women. I get it. It's very intoxicating. All right. I think black women, they got the most intoxicating juices in nectar that comes from the sap of the womb we've ever experienced. All right. It's just it's attached to crazy. You know what I'm saying? So I get it. But when I like places like Taiwan, I don't know what the birth rate is on Taiwan. This list just showed uh the top 10, 15, the top 25 at the lowest. Remember, in order to maintain your population, you got to be at 2.1. And the highest on this list right here that they could fit on a post was 1.3. So I don't know where Taiwan fits at, but man, in Taiwan, it was just like none of the women has any sexual appeal. I'm not saying they were ugly. It was just they had zero sex appeal. All right. It was just kind of, there's no disrespect to them. They were cute, but it seemed like they were they're more liberal in China, but just more conservative. They were conservative, more liberal than China, but conservative. I couldn't imagine their fertility rate being at a certain level. And how you look has nothing to do with, you know, uh, the rate at which you procreate. But I didn't really see that many. I didn't really see that many families like that. I saw a lot of women just they were opting out of marriages and having kids with just staying at home with their family, their mom and dad, living at home with their mom and dad, and not interested in men at all. I noticed that from a lot of women out there. They're like, I don't want to have any kids, and they'll be in relationships and they didn't want to have any kids, and they would say they'll never have any kids. It's like, what will you do if the man you're with wants to have kids and he ends up getting with somebody else? Then that's fine. Like that was just the answer to everything. So it wasn't them wanting to have families, them wanting to procreate with the man that they're with. So it's like you see that in Thailand. Thailand just seems like it's a world full of singles, and the people that have children, they do it the right way. Are there single mothers in Thailand? Absolutely. But what do these children grow up wanting? They don't really grow up wanting, the offspring doesn't really grow up wanting kids and family. They knew how neglected they were. They don't want to give that to a child. It's just, you know, um, so it's a mindset. It's social reconstructing, social engineering. All right, so um Guinea equal what's EQ? I forgot. I think this is the Guinea that's in Africa. These are the most thriving countries with the highest fertility rates in the world. So uh Guinea in Africa, 4.1. And remember, in order to maintain your population, you have to have 2.1, a fertility rate of 2.1. Guinea is 4.1. Zambia is 4.1. The Republic of Congo, 4.2. Burkina Faso in Africa, 4.2. Togo, 4.2. Guinea, 4.2. So I don't know if this is. Anyways, Uganda is 4.3. The Ivory Coast is 4.3. Cameroon is 4.3. They getting it in. Sudan, 4.3. Nigeria has a fertility rate of 4.5. Benin is 4.6. Yemen, 4.6. Tanzania has a fertility rate of 4.6. I've never even heard of this country before. Mauritania, 4.7. I need to look into that country. Mozambique, 4.8. Okay. Afghanistan, 4.8. Burundi has a fertility rate of 4.9. Angola. Now we're starting to get into. No, my bad. Angola's in Africa. Like I got that mixed up with Anguilla. Angola is 5.1. Mali, 5.6. This one is CAR. What's CAR? Let me look this up. What's CAR? CAR. I guess they couldn't fit. Central African Republic. Okay. Central African Republic, they have a fertility rate of 6.0. Okay. The Congo, DR Congo, 6.1. Niger, 6.1. Chad, 6.1. And the number one country with the highest fertility rate is Somalia, with a fertility rate of 6.1. Right? So damn near all of these countries are in Africa. Africa, they're not suffering at all. Their fertility rate, the black sector of the world, they're getting it in. All right. There's no issue over here. So that's why when you see these AI photos of, okay, this is what the average person will look like in 2050, right? Which is around the corner. The reason why they're saying that is because, like, hey, man, these whites and honorary whites, in Asian sectors of the world, their numbers are dwindling. So, in order for people to eventually, for these people to have children, either they'll look at each other for the twos and fews, or they'll probably date out and procreate out of their own race. So soon enough, everybody's just going to be mixed with black in them. All right. They just going to be mixed and intermingling and mixed breeding very soon. But people who want to hold on to their culture and only procreate with themselves at the rate they're going, they're dying off. Right. And within their culture, mixed breeding is looked down upon. It's not looked down upon in black sectors of the world. So, I find that very interesting. Especially in Asian society, Asians, just people who are classified as Asian, it's like they make up more than half the world's population, right? They make up more than half the world's population, and their numbers are dwindling. Um, that's very interesting. As a matter of fact, I have a video. I can't really show it on my phone, but I could play the audio if y'all want to hear it, because um I saw this video on TikTok. It's about 3 minutes long. And I can't play it through my phone. I could play it through computer, but I don't have my computer with me. But here, listen to this video from TikTok.
Japan is shrinking, not in terms of geography, but in terms of something far worse, population. In 2024, Japan's population fell to 123 million. That's down from 128 million in 2010. And by 2070, the government expects it to plunge below 87 million. That's a decline of 32% in just one lifetime. But the real crisis, it's not how many people Japan has, it's how many people are left? Japan is now the oldest country in the world, with 30% of its population over the age of 65, and nearly 1 in 10 is over the age of 80. There are now more adult diapers sold in Japan than baby diapers. In some towns, schools are shutting down, replaced by elderly care centers. Rural villages have turned into ghost towns, with forests swallowing abandoned homes. And here's the thing, while much of the developed world faces aging populations, most countries have one major advantage that Japan refuses to embrace: immigration. Unlike the US, Canada, the UK, or Germany, Japan has been insanely resistant to letting outsiders in. The percentage of foreigners in Japan is just 2.3% of the total population. Compare that to about 15% in the US, 13% in Germany, and over 20% in Canada. In fact, Japan has one of the lowest immigration rates in the OECD. And while other nations actively recruit immigrants to fill labor shortages and boost the economy, Japan is treating immigration like a last resort. Temporary workers, yes. Permanent residents, not so much. Even during moments of obvious need, like the post-pandemic labor shortage in 2022, Japan remained hesitant. That year, while Germany took in over 1 million immigrants and Canada increased its annual immigration target to 500,000, Japan barely nudged its policy. Now, the government has experimented with short-term programs like the 2019 Specified Skilled Worker Visa. That was designed to bring in foreign labor for 14 industries, including construction, caregiving, and agriculture. But even that was restricted with language requirements and no path to citizenship for most people. The result, Japan has quietly become a demographic ticking time bomb. So why won't Japan open up? Well, the answer lies in a deep blend of cultural, historical, and even political factors. See, Japan is an island nation that prides itself on its culture. For centuries, it was isolated, cut off from the world for over 200 years. And even after opening its borders in the 19th century, the mindset never fully shifted. See, there's a belief that Japanese culture is unique and that foreigners, no matter how well-intentioned, simply don't fit in. This is reflected in everything from real estate, where foreigners often have trouble renting apartments, to job market, where many companies companies require fluency in Japanese in order to get a job. And then there's also social life. There's even a term meaning outsider that remains widely used. Politically, no major party has championed immigration. While conservative politicians fear social tension, even progressive leaders are cautious. The immigration remains deeply unpopular with the public. So instead of changing course, Japan is doubling down on robots, automation, and even women in the workforce as solutions to its demographic collapse. But now, even those aren't enough. Walk into some Japanese convenience stores today, and you might not see a single employee. Just check out robotic floor cleaners and pre-packaged meals restocked by machines.
Yeah, so that's crazy. Like they turn a lot of schools into elderly care centers, you know? So I find that interesting, but they are going through a crisis over there. And, it's, hey, man, we want to preserve the culture. This is and the third. We don't want to let anybody in, but we're dying off. But we want them to procreate, but we want to invite people over to procreate. So it's like, that turns up the ears of a lot of people who want to travel or want to relocate outside of America, but it's like to be used in order to not give you permanent residency. It's like, man, what's the point? And, you know, what I've learned from traveling is like, hey, man, is, the best quality of life is in America. It's best to just travel, visit, get a reboot, and then come right back. Now I travel with a different mindset. I see that my quality of life is best in America. And, I can go somewhere and enjoy myself and realize like, hey, man, if I were to live here within a year or two's time, I'd probably be miserable. It's going to be frustrating. So, in the most frustrating places where they're not open to foreigners, they're suffering. They're suffering. All right. They are even in Canada. Even in Canada, after a while living in Canada, it was very frustrating living in Canada. Canada ain't what you think it is, man. Like, especially if you black, it is not what you think it is. Right. It's cool to visit. Like when I was visiting Canada, going on Regina, Saskatchewan, oh, it was a lot of fun. Right. It was a lot of fun visiting Canada, but actually, actually relocating in Canada, that's when it was immediately, it was like, oh man, this ain't what I thought it was gonna be. So it's cool when you're young to make those mistakes, but when you're a man of a certain age and you're not making money for yourself, right? You don't have passive income where you could just live wherever you want and just retire someplace. You're gonna look at a country totally different, right? And to go through that experience and then they're having a fertility crisis. Say, hey man, you don't have to catch a stray. You're going through all these issues and you're dealing with local women who are turning into feminists. They don't want families. They don't, because that's what a lot of men want when they travel abroad. Not to say that they can't get it, but it's like, when they say women got to kiss a few frogs in order to meet their king, it's like you got to go through a lot of women in order to find somebody who's, wants family and stability. And then on top of that, you got to deal with racist family members. It's like, man, just stay out the way, from all that. Let them go through their crisis, what they're going through. You don't have to be a part of that. You know, this is why I choose to, live, work in America, and then travel throughout the years to other countries. All right. So I'm going to end this live right here. I hope you guys are safe. I do have, starting next Friday, I'm going to purchase a DJI Mini. And we're going to do a lot more. We're going to do live streams every other night. And I'm going to talk more about, stuff that's going on in the media. Just talking about issues that's going on regularly instead of doing weekly live streams just once or twice a week. I'm going to start doing live streams every other night, but I won't be on a computer. It'll be on my phone. I won't be able to take calls because you'll hear me from a lavalier mic. But that's just to, create more content, get us more active and involved, and have discussions more frequently than I am right now. Right, to bring us more together, have more discussions throughout the week. The phone will be aimed towards the road, right? But it's better than nothing, right? So, anyways, you guys be safe. I'm over and I'm out. Peace.